The story opens on a cold Midwestern night in 2020. The narrator, a widower in his 70s, is texting with his two adult daughters, Jenny and Angie, as they watch The Bachelorette together from their respective homes. The group chat buzzes with witty commentary about the contestants, their personalities, and their questionable fashion choices. What began as an evening of light-hearted television soon becomes an emotional bridge between a father and his daughters during the isolating months of the COVID-19 pandemic. This shared ritual means more to him than the show itself. Since losing his wife, Tony, 3 years earlier, loneliness has settled deeply into his days. The daughters' teasing texts and the familiar cadence of their humor give him a sense of belonging and purpose, something to look forward to each week. His daughter's bond with him feels like a continuation of what Tony built, a family defined by closeness, affection, and warmth. When a commercial flashes across the screen casting seniors looking for love for a new spin-off of The Bachelor, Angie jokes, "Dad, you should do that." The narrator laughs it off, but the suggestion lingers. He looks in the mirror and sees an aging man with scruffy hair, a beard in need of trimming, and a face weathered by grief. He wonders who could possibly want to see him on TV or want to date him at all. The moment is humorous, yet under it sits a quiet ache. He hasn't truly moved on from Tony, and he isn't sure he wants to. He thinks back to the start of their love story, Ottumwa, Iowa, 1969. He was a confident high school senior at a small Catholic school, outgoing and athletic, involved in sports and debate. Tony, a junior, was her opposite, quiet, artistic, and introspective. They met backstage during the high school play not because he cared about theater but because he was chasing another girl. Ironically, that girl ignored him, and instead he found himself drawn to Tony. Their connection began with small talk and grew into something undeniable. She had noticed him at basketball games. He couldn't stop thinking about her brown eyes and gentle smile. Soon they were inseparable, dancing every Friday night to Beatles and Monkees covers at the YMCA or the Ottumwa Coliseum. They fell in love young with the intensity and purity only teenagers can manage. But not everyone approved. His mother, an emotionally troubled and controlling woman, did everything she could to sabotage the relationship. She tried to set him up with another girl, changed his curfews, and even threatened to withhold legal permission for him to marry before turning 21. Her disapproval only fueled his determination. "We were Romeo and Juliet," he says, minus the double suicide. He and Tony decided to marry despite the obstacles, and with the help of Tony's supportive parents, they found a loophole. They could wed in Missouri without parental consent. Realizing she couldn't stop them, his mother reluctantly gave in. His proposal was modest but heartfelt. While window shopping downtown, he suggested they step into Bookins, a jewelry store that had been serving Ottumwa for generations. He paid $60 down on a $700 engagement ring, an enormous sum for a young man working part-time jobs. Later, over burgers at the local canteen, he gave Tony the ring and asked her to marry him. She said yes. They wed 8 months later at St. Mary's Church in a simple ceremony followed by a potluck reception in the basement. Their first home was humble, a small apartment with a fold-down dining table and a half-sized refrigerator, but it was filled with love. He worked grueling hours managing a fast food franchise called Mr. Quick, taking home leftover cheeseburgers and milk for dinner. Money was scarce, yet happiness was abundant. The apartment could have been the worst place in the world, he reflects, and it would still have felt like home because it was ours. Over time, his hard work paid off. He rose from counter worker to regional manager, and by 1978, when a historic blizzard threatened to shutter the chain, he seized the opportunity to buy out the owners on contract. He had little to lose and everything to prove. Tony stood by him as she always did, trusting his instincts completely. "She always believed in me," he recalls. Their strengths complemented each other, his logic to her creativity, his planning to her spontaneity. They were, in every sense, partners. Through relentless work, 10-hour days, 7 days a week, he grew the business into a success. The secret, he explains, wasn't luck but consistency, doing 100 things 1% better than anyone else. Still, his dedication came at a cost. He missed his daughter Jenny's 3rd birthday because of work, a regret that would stay with him forever. Yet Tony understood. She carried the emotional weight of the household, parenting, and love with grace. Tragedy struck early when baby Jenny developed spinal meningitis. Tony's keen observation of her strange neck movements saved their daughter's life. The illness left Jenny partially deaf, but instead of allowing it to define her, the family treated it as a quirk, not a limitation. The narrator created nightly games to help test her hearing, counting to 10 in different languages, turning a potential weakness into a playful ritual. Humor, not pity, became their family's language. After the ordeal, the narrator was reluctant to have more children, fearful of repeating such pain. But Tony, adopted and raised as an only child, longed to give Jenny a sibling. 7 years later, Angie was born during a blizzard, almost literally between football plays, as Tony refused to leave until the Bears-Packers game ended. Even her husband's panic and protest couldn't shake her calm. She punched him playfully for his dramatics, and hours later, their second daughter arrived healthy and strong. Family life flourished. Summers were spent boating on the Mississippi River, teaching the girls to water ski or pulling them behind the boat in an inflatable tube. Tony packed picnics. He brought Ritz crackers and peanut butter. Weekends were sacred. They weren't wealthy, but their lives were rich with laughter, teamwork, and small joys. Professionally, his path evolved again. By the late 1980s, he sold his Mr. Quick franchises for a profit and entered the corporate side of food distribution, eventually becoming president and COO of a mid-sized company. He doubled its size before it closed in 2008, leaving him financially comfortable and ready to slow down. But retirement, he found, didn't suit him. Too young, too energetic, too purposeful, he sought meaning beyond money. A newspaper ad for mediation training caught his eye. It promised a role in civil court disputes, a way to serve the community while reconnecting with his long-abandoned interest in law. He became a certified mediator, working in small claims, workplace conflicts, and civil rights cases, learning to truly listen, to tone, to silence, to body language. It became one of the most rewarding chapters of his life. Meanwhile, Toni found her own fulfillment. After years in medical coding for John Deere Healthcare, a job she took for stability rather than joy, she transitioned into volunteer coordination at a hospital where she opened a small flower shop and taught floral design. The work rekindled her creativity and filled her with pride. When she retired in 2017, it was bittersweet. She loved her job but was ready for the next adventure. That adventure was the lake house. After years of searching, they found their dream home on Big Long Lake in northern Indiana, nestled among maple and hickory trees, halfway between their daughters' homes and close to his aging father. It wasn't the fanciest house they'd seen, but it had one thing others didn't: direct, gentle access to the water. Toni called it what lake life is all about. That phrase became their shared mantra, symbolizing peace, simplicity, and the reward of decades of hard work. Their first night there was pure joy. Before the movers arrived, they camped on the floor like newlyweds, wrapped in blankets, watching moonlight shimmer across the lake. The next morning, with coffee mugs in hand, they walked barefoot to the water's edge. Toni waded in, the sunlight forming a halo around her hair, and said again, "This is what lake life is all about." It was, unknowingly, one of the last perfect moments of their marriage. In the days that followed, they settled into their new home, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and savoring the start of retirement. But then Toni began to feel back pain. At first, they brushed it off. She'd had back problems before, and rest usually cured them. Yet by the 4th of July, her appetite had waned, her energy was gone, and she could barely enjoy the fireworks she loved. Instead of watching from the dock, she stayed on the deck, unwilling to climb the stairs. He noticed. He worried. Each day, he asked if she was okay. Each day, she smiled faintly and said it would pass. Finally, desperate to act, he made a quiet ultimatum: "If you're not feeling better by the time I get home from the Lake Association meeting this Saturday, I'm taking you to the hospital." And that's where the chapter ends, not with a resolution but with an ache of foreboding. The first proposal refers not only to the literal proposal of marriage decades earlier but to the emotional proposal of this new chapter in life. A promise of shared joy, renewed purpose, and lasting companionship that fate, cruelly, will soon interrupt. In the first proposal, the narrator weaves humor and heartbreak, youthful optimism and the sorrow of loss into one continuous thread. It's a love story told backward, from a pandemic text thread to a small-town teenage romance, from a scruffy widower to a boy in love at a school dance. The chapter introduces themes of endurance, devotion, resilience, and rediscovery, how life continues to offer second chances even as it reminds us of what we've lost. More than anything, it's a testament to partnership. Through financial hardship, illness, and decades of work, Toni and her husband built a life defined not by luxury but by shared laughter and unshakable faith in one another. The chapter closes with a quiet dread, an almost imperceptible shift from joy to worry, foreshadowing the devastating loss that will come and the journey of grief and renewal that will follow.